Hi guys, welcome along to another one of our HPA members webinars. Now before we get stuck into our webinar today, I'm just going to go over a few things that have been happening around here, and to be fair, there has been a huge amount happening around here because we haven't been running any webinars since before Christmas. Prior to Christmas, Jono, Ben and I headed overseas to the PRI show that was back in early December. Basically came back to the point where we were shutting up for the Christmas break. So it has actually been a little bit of time since we've run one of these webinars, and hopefully we can all collectively remember how exactly they work. So there is a huge amount that I could go over, and I want to keep this to a little bit of a minimum, otherwise we'll be here for around about an hour and a half just for our little pre-show here. And also won't have too much to talk about for the following weeks. So some exciting sort of developments that have been coming up over the Christmas break though was what's going on with our Nissan 350Z, or our SRZ as we have started referring to it as. So if we can head across to my laptop screen for a moment, we are working with a local fab company here in Central Otago to fit up our Nissan our Nissan SR20 engine. So you can see that there sitting quite happily in the 350Z engine bay. So for those who are joining us for the first time or haven't really been following along with this build, this is now an SR20 VE as it's referred to. Uses an SR20 DET bottom end. It's all built with aftermarket rods and pistons, ready to take a fair hammering from us, and it's now mated to a Nissan P11 Primera VVL cylinder head. So this incorporates Nissan's version of VTEC. We've got 3 cam lobes per cylinder, basically a high RPM cam lobe and a low RPM cam lobe. Really, this is Nissan's take on Honda's VTEC mechanism. So not a particularly new development here, but particularly in comparison to the earlier SR20DE and DET cylinder heads, that VVL cylinder head fixes a lot of the known problems with the SR20s. In particular, the rockers are now mounted on a shaft, so there's no way that they can come off. The flow through the ports as well, and the chamber shapes are superior. So generally, all things considered, if you fit the VE cylinder head onto an SR20DE or DET block, you're going to have the potential to see a significant improvement in performance. All right, back to the rest of the package here. We have got our Plasma Man inlet manifold. So this is going to be housing 8 injectors, and on the front of that we have got a Bosch Motorsport drive-by-wire throttle body. Now the reason we've converted here to drive-by-wire throttle is so that we can incorporate auto blip through the drive-by-wire system and the ECU for our 6-speed sequential gearbox. So this is going to allow the driver to stay at full throttle for upshifts, and also during braking the driver is going to be able to concentrate solely on the braking performance. There's no need to heel and toe on the downshifts in order to match RPM. That's all handled automatically by the ECU blipping the throttle when the gearbox is shifted down. I mentioned there's 8 injectors. They're probably overkill for what we're actually trying to do power wise. We're running a set of 8 Injector Dynamics ID 1300X injectors. The reason we've gone with the staged injection or dual injection per cylinder there is actually so we can create some course content and webinar content around staged injection, how to deal with that, how to tune it. We've had a lot of requests for information around that, so that'll be coming up. This engine is also set up so that it's going to be running on pump gas for endurance events, and this will allow us to hopefully make somewhere in the region of about 400 wheel horsepower. That should be more than enough for what we want to do to be somewhat competitive in the class we'll be running in, but we'll also be able to run flex fuel or E85 for sprint events where we don't need to consider our fuel burn quite so much. And particularly once we step up to a slightly different turbo, I'll talk about that in a second, this is going to give us the potential to probably make somewhere in the region of 600 plus wheel horsepower. Certainly should wake up the 350Z pretty well compared to what we're used to with the naturally aspirated VQ35 engine. Now on the exhaust side, we can see we've got our turbocharger. This is a Garrett GTX 3076R Gen 2 turbo. I've posted this on our Instagram a while ago with some information around the turbo, and understandably we got a few questions about why we've chosen this turbo in comparison to perhaps the newer G25 660, which on paper I do understand would be a great fit. The reason we've actually done this is in conjunction with Garrett. We are going to develop and do some testing on this particular car. So far, for those of you out there who have been looking at the new G Series turbos from Garrett, there hasn't been a huge amount of information out there. It's not really easy to get direct comparisons on exactly the same engine between the existing GTX turbos and the new G Series. Understandably, most enthusiasts, when they're modifying their car, they're going to generally make a raft of changes all at the same time. So it's hard to really pin down the results of just changing the turbocharger, but that's exactly what we intend to do here. So we're going to run it, get some baselines, get everything tuned and dialed in on the GTX 3076, which in its own right is definitely no slouch, and then we'll be shifting over to hopefully Garrett are just on the verge of releasing their new G30 turbocharger. So really excited to see how that goes. As you can probably imagine, given the condition of the engine bay right now with not a single wire in there, there's still a fairly large amount of work to go before we get to the point of actually running this. So once we get that back from Fab, that's exactly what's going to happen. We've got a little bit of painting in the engine bay to do, and then everything needs to be wired. We need to get a new drive shaft made up for our TTI 6-speed sequential gearbox, add a shifter, and all of those sorts of things. And again, for those who aren't aware, the intention with this car is that we will be competing in the South Island Endurance Championship Series, which is a series of 3-hour endurance races, unsurprisingly held here in the South Island of New Zealand. So stay tuned for that. The series doesn't start till much later in the year, so we do still have a fair amount of time to get everything up and running. All right, with that out of the way, we want to talk about something that we're really excited about, something that has just been released, our brand new professional motorsport wiring course. So for those of you who are wondering why we've got this work of art of a motorsport wiring harness sitting on the bench in front of me, this is because this is the harness that Zach has just completed as a part of the worked example section of our professional motorsport wiring course. So this is a course that we have been asked for, I think actually since HPA was first founded, and it is one of those areas that it is incredibly difficult to get really good solid information on. If you want to learn how to build a professional motorsport wiring harness using techniques such as concentric twisting, using Autosport connectors, and understanding what crimp tools that you need to use, etc. There is a lot of difficulty in gaining that information. And certainly, as far as we're concerned, we haven't seen that all put together neatly in one place. That is until now. So Zach's been working feverishly on this course for the last half of last year. This is a massive course. There is a huge amount of information in it. We are exceptionally proud of it, and we know that this is going to be hugely beneficial to any of you either wanting to produce a harness such as this one here for your own cars, or maybe you're actually looking at stepping out there into the professional motorsport wiring harness industry and you're looking at doing this for a living. This will get you that step up. You'll be up to speed. You'll know the products that you're going to be using. You're going to know the correct construction techniques, and you'll be able to see from start to finish how one of these harnesses is constructed. Now, because this course has just been released, we are also doing a special on it at the moment. So first of all, I'll get the guys to put a link into the comments that you can follow. If you want to head across to the wiring course page, this is going to give you an opportunity to watch a short video that Zach shot about it. There's all of the information about the course. You'll be able to also see the course curriculum. Let's just head across to my laptop screen and we'll give you a quick rundown of that page so you can view that later in your own time. So there's the video up the top there. There's a little description on what the course is. I will mention here the course is $299 US. We believe that that is incredibly cheap for the amount of material and the content that goes into this. This is exceptionally good value for money. Despite this, we also still
still offer our payment plan on this course or any of our others, so you can break that down into as many as 8 individual payments of $37 a week. At the bottom here, you will see a quick rundown of what you're going to learn, but of course, if you want to actually get in more detail, you can click on View Curriculum. It's going to take you through and you can break down and see exactly what's included in the course. Particularly when it comes to constructing a harness at this level, a lot of the work actually goes into the planning stage. So this is designing your harness, this is documenting your harness, deciding what wire gauge you're going to use, what products, what connectors you're going to be using, and this is before you even pick up a crimp tool or a pair of wire strippers. So that's all contained in there as well. Now, while we know that at $299 this course represents amazing value for money, we are doing an introductory offer. So there is a promotional code that Jono will drop into the comments there. You can use that code. The first 50 people to use that code will get $50 off that purchase price. And I do apologize to any of you viewers who are watching this at a later point in time on our YouTube channel. This is an introductory offer only, so you are going to have to be in there quick. If you're watching it live, I'd suggest you move quickly if this course interests you. As with all of our courses, this does come with a 60-day, no questions asked, money back guarantee, so you can buy with absolute confidence. Of course, it'll also give you 3 months access to our private members only forum. So this is going to help support you with your own wiring job if you've got questions that aren't answered inside of that course. Alright, so jump in there. Again, John will drop a link and a promotional code into the comments that you can follow to get involved. And in terms of other things that have been going on around HPA, for those of you who aren't aware, we recently purchased a new race car, which is, well, it's actually not that new to us. This is something that a lot of you may have already seen if you've been following us for a while. We had a build series on the car called Project Panhard. You can actually still find that on our YouTube channel. We basically documented the wiring, the electronics installation, and the tuning of a Toyota GT86. It's a 2013 GT86 that had a Toyota 1UZFE engine dropped into it. So again, on my laptop screen at the moment, this is the current state of the car. We're good friends with the owner of the car, and he had done a bit of development, but basically got to a point where he wasn't interested in pursuing the car further. This is a pretty good place for us to jump in. So it is still fitted with the 1UZFE. Don't let the Holly EFI LS inlet manifold fool you. That is just modified to fit on the 1UZFE. This is now a race built motor, so it's got more compression, it's got Sensei ported heads, and it also has much more aggressive cams. Probably somewhere in the region of about 450 horsepower right now. It's also dry sumped and it's running Motec electronics. So in its own right, the car is pretty impressive, but we have had a few problems with it. And this is natural teething problems for just about anyone who is involved with high performance cars. We're obviously interested in racing this car, and what we've found is that at the track, it has a lot of trouble keeping cool. Now on this shot here on my laptop, we can see what we're thinking is part of the problem here, which is the oil cooler. So that's the large cooler that you can see just below the number plate. So this is actually fitted in front of the radiator, and it blocks probably about 1/3 of the radiator core. So we have got some changes in mind that we're going to be playing around with to see if we can get the temperatures under control a little bit better. We recently competed in this car in a 1-hour endurance event at our local track, Highlands Motorsport Park, and it didn't quite go to plan, but that's of course the teething issues that you're always likely to come up with when you take on a new project. So I'll just head across to my laptop screen again with our Motec data. This is taken from actually quite an early part of the race, and what we're looking at here is our engine coolant temperature, which is in our 3rd group down, and you can see at the point that I've got my cursor there, we're sitting at 109 degrees C. The peak temperatures we actually saw were close to 120. Which is pretty concerning, and it's probably fortunate that the engine was still running.
For tuners out there watching this, this is also a good place to point out that if you are tuning a race car and you want to build in some safety features or safety precautions into the tune, it is a really good idea to discuss this with your client and work out exactly what they want and how you're going to incorporate this. The reason I raise this is because on this particular application, we've got no rev limiter if the engine temperature starts to get a bit high. What instead we've got is a warning light on the dash to bring the driver's attention to the fact that the temperature is getting up there. This should allow the driver to kind of make some changes to his driving style or assess the situation as required in order to get that temperature back under control. Unfortunately, Ben, the other founder of HPA, was the guy who was in the hot seat for the first half hour of this half-hour race, and he was pretty busy on the reset button on the alarm. It certainly didn't stop him pushing the car as hard as he could. So, as I've said, lucky that the car is still in one piece, and we've definitely got some work to do there with the cooling. Given that we aren't new to the Toyota 86 package, we've got a turbocharged Toyota 86 here in the shop as well as a development car. We've actually had cooling problems on that car also, and while there's a lot of things going on here, one of the problems we've highlighted, and we could be wrong here, is that we think there are some issues around getting airflow back out of the engine bay. So of course it's one thing to get the airflow into the radiator, that's essential, but we also need to be able to evacuate that air out of the back of the radiator as well, otherwise we essentially still get no airflow through the core. So it's a work in progress. We've got some other issues around cooling the rear diff as well, which I won't bore you with right now, but we're really excited to deal with these small issues, get the car back out on track and see what it's actually capable of. Just heading back across to my laptop screen, I'll just give you a quick rundown on the rest of the race. So Ben went out and started the race. We were definitely outclassed in this race. There was some really serious machinery and we certainly weren't out to win. One of the other problems we had is fairly early on in Ben's stint, as you can hopefully see here, we're now missing the rear bumper during this pit stop. Fairly early on, one side of the bumper had actually worn through on a tyre where it connects or where it's attached to the chassis. So that, after about 3 laps, started flapping around, which is never a good look. We were waiting to get a mechanical black flag, which never came, but fortunately, probably as it turned out, the whole bumper ended up ripping off down one of the fastest sections of the straight, ended up on the track out of the way, so we carried on with the race. For a 1 hour race, we do need to refuel, so that's what's going on here. And then once I got in for my second half of the race, ended up heading out of the pits under a safety car. Basically, as soon as I exited the pits, we had a really heavy vibration from the front left. Basically did a few more laps while I was trying to diagnose from the driver's seat what was going on. Started to get a long brake pedal and pretty quickly figured out that the left front wheel was loose. Now, probably straight away a lot of you are thinking, well, why didn't you just tighten the wheel before it left the pits? Valid point, but I can assure you that the wheels were all torqued correctly before the car left the pits. But this is a lesson for you. When we purchased the car, it had aftermarket wheels on it, not uncommon, and there are no spacer rings to actually spigot or locate the wheel onto the center of the hub. And a lot of people leave these out, and possibly on a road going car, a lot of people get away with it as well, given the abuse that the car was seeing on the racetrack, along with the heat that was being generated. In this case, with no central spigot to locate the wheel, all of the location of the wheel was done through the studs, and this allowed the studs or the wheel nuts to actually work loose. It happens that with this track being predominantly a right-hand clockwise track, so you're predominantly making right-hand corners, the front left is the most heavily loaded corner of the car. So that's what showed up. Came into the pits to have the wheel replaced, continued on. We got the checkered flag, and we didn't come last, and the car still goes. So I guess all things being considered, a lot of takeaways there, a lot to learn from, but not a complete disaster for our first 1 hour race. Alright, lastly, before we actually get into our webinar content today, I just wanted to cover off our YouTube channel. Let's head across to my laptop screen. There is a lot that's been going on our YouTube channel because we've been updating this constantly since our last webinar in December. This is a great time to remind you that if you are not currently subscribed to our YouTube channel, please make sure you do so. I think at the moment we are releasing 3 videos a week. There's some really great content in there. If I do
do say so myself. And the video that we've just dropped today is probably one of my favourite interviews from PRI. We caught up with Shane T. Probably doesn't need too much introduction to most tuners around the world, probably one of the most prolific tuners of drag cars in particular anywhere in the world. And it's always great to have a chat to Shane and get some insight on what he's working with. So particular in this interview, we talked to him about compound turbocharging. If you haven't seen this already, Shane is working closely with the guys at Mazworks and Team Techno Toys on their Nissan drag car running a Mazworks SR20. The car is already incredibly quick. It just lost the world record for ET, but if my memory serves correct, it still holds the mile-an-hour world record for a 4-cylinder engine by a few tenths of a mile an hour. It's no slouch, making around 2200 horsepower currently. What we find from talking to Shane though is that the aims for this package are pretty insane. They're actually talking about numbers in the vicinity of 3,000 horsepower from a 4-cylinder engine and boost levels in excess of 150 psi using triple compound turbochargers. There's a lot to take in, there's a lot of information to digest, and it's around about a 20-minute interview, so it's not going to be for everyone. But if you are interested in learning more about what Shane's up to, head along and check that out. Alright guys, thank you for watching. Give us a few moments here and we'll get started with our webinar.